only got through 2 people. That's a good sign because it means they're really interested. Right? Okay, so here is a funny story. I was, when I looked through the program for the first time, I saw this topic and I thought, wow, I really want to be there because I'm about to graduate and I would really like to know what the information people are going to share in that. And Negin said to me, oh, don't worry, you will. And so now here I am on the panel. What we're going to talk about is learning analytics professionals. What should they look like? What should they offer? And what can they get? Whatever it is that they offer. Oh, the other part of the community building piece is that everyone in this section should turn around and wave to the kids at home and say, hi, we love you too. So I'm going to try and set the scene a little bit, and then we have very distinguished panelists here to share a variety of views from the student perspective to the industry perspective and the university perspective. Make sense? Oh, yeah, excellent. So, I'm kind of at the end of my doctoral career, so I get to be kind of philosophical and look back and say, what did I do? And cry a little bit or be happy. And for me, education is essentially about asking the question, well, what kinds of people do we want? And how do we make that happen? And so from that perspective, it's what around in this part of the world they would call an adaptive problem. So I'm going to make a distinction that's made, has been made many, many times about education, in that it is an adaptive problem. And the difference is between the technical and adaptive problem is that, let's say, the projector and the computer aren't communicating with each other, and that never happens here, we know. And there is a technical fix. There's something that can be done to make sure that the connection is made and everything works fine. The difference between that and an adaptive problem, like something like education, is that an adaptive problem is incredibly complex, and that also it involves people and behavioral change. So education isn't necessarily a problem we can just find a technical fix for. And so the kinds of problems, the kinds of issues that we need to deal with in it are ones where we need to work with people and try and influence them and what they believe and what they think and that kind of thing, which makes it a big mess often. So moving on from there to learning analytics, to my simple mind, I suppose, is that learning analytics presents this strange space in which maybe we can bring technical solutions into this adaptive space by feeding information that we get technically back into the system. And that's kind of what I want to take, that's where I want to think about being a professional in that kind of world. So this is my symbol for that. It's kind of learning analytics represents this space that can deal in both these ideas, in that there are technical solutions, but we are also trying to work in behavioral change. Unfortunately, dealing with adaptive problems creates a lot of anxiety because it's about learning, and people have learning anxiety, and they have to deal with things like, am I good enough to be here? Do I have the skills? Do I have the knowledge? Does anyone have the knowledge? And so people are making decisions in very insecure circumstances. I think that's the position that we're in at the moment. I've talked to a lot of people, and there seems to be a lot of kind of people being very cautious around how we should move in this space because they're not exactly sure what the problem is that they're trying to solve. They know that there is a bunch of data out there, and they know that there's a bunch of people with technical skills, and in the kind of worst case scenario, they're saying, well, clearly if we join these two things together, we're going to fix it, which is probably the wrong way of looking at it. And so in terms of being a professional in learning analytics, I think we need to be cognizant, and I think we need to think in terms of the adaptive behavioral change piece, as well as just saying, oh, we can plug this hole with a technical solution, and because that's not necessarily going to get us where we need to go. So the kind of idea that I've come around to is essentially that what we probably need to develop is a bunch of people that don't just have the technical skills, but also have the capacity to deal with the anxiety that people have around these issues, and can really translate between both the decision makers and the kind of two sides that we've talked about already, the kind of computer science side and the traditional research side, and that can allay the kind of anxiety that's going on in between all those things. So I think if we're going to make ourselves useful in terms of having something to offer, that it's going to be, in the first instance, this translation capacity. I think that's where I'm going to end. I'm going to hand it over to Al, and he's going to talk about the kind of industry perspective around that.
Okay, so I guess I'll talk about, I'm Vice President of R&D and Analytics at McGraw Education. Joined the company in September, and one of my challenges is to put together a team of data scientists, engineers, visualization experts. So talk about what attributes I've been looking for in the composition of the team. It's primarily character. Character in three senses. So table stakes, people who come to McGraw-Hill, they're technically brilliant, and that's just expected. They have lots of options. They could work for another company. So what would attract them to us, and what would attract us to them? And so I really think about character in three senses. Sense number one, sense of purpose and mission. I'll talk about that. Sense of the moment, and then sense of community. So let me talk about each of those. What do I mean by sense of mission and purpose? I think we're all educators. We all firmly believe in providing quality education at a very low cost to the millions of learners out there. And I think that's the DNA at McGraw-Hill. We've been working with authors for decades. That's in the DNA of every one of you. So that's not an easily transferable skill, right? You get people who have technical expertise, believe in computer science, data mining, but really truly believing in the mission of education, that's not transferable. So that's one of the attributes that we look for. Second, sense of the moment. When I go to work, to me, every day is like playing in the World Cup. It's fun, it's exciting, but if you are lucky and fortunate to be in the World Cup, it might be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, right? You don't want to squander the opportunity, the moment. And I firmly believe that the technology is ready for prime time. We all get it. We're truly at a moment in history where we can really change how learning reaches out to the world. So that's just another character attribute of does this individual have a sense of the moment? Let's not waste the time. Let's not squander the opportunity. I think the third one is, into football metaphors or soccer metaphors. The technically brilliant people in general, our training is score a goal. So a lot of people are trained to kick the football into the net, but we don't teach people how to pass the ball. Right? So it's learning how to pass the ball. It's called total football, Netherlands, I think. Total, what's the term?
Totaal voetbal.
Yeah, what is that? Can you describe what does that mean?
Well, look at the next match when we're beating.
All right, we'll see. But part of the idea is there's no fixed position, right? You do what it takes to win the game. But it's also the idea of passing. That's a very difficult art. So instead of thinking, kick the ball into the net, how am I going to open up the space so I can pass to the individual? So it's having a sense of the team, but the team is also collaboration. Our team, I have members of our team here, and we firmly believe that we're going to advance learning analytics and learning sciences by collaborating with the academic research community. So really having a sense of the community. So it's not the individual, but the team.
First of all, it's like go Germany, not Netherlands. I had to say it. Okay, so I'm going to mostly involve you guys. I am at the end of my PhD as well, but I'm not going to get into philosophy. Thank you for doing that. But I will take it a little easier. So I'm going to ask you a question. Why did you choose learning analytics? And this is for everybody, not just grad students. Or you can change that question with another one that Al came up with. Why are you selling out? So, any contribution? Why learning analytics? So you guys chose the field without, yes?
What do you mean with the second question? Can you elaborate?
It's just a joke that Al made.
What I meant by that is, so Ani is actually joining McGraw Hill. By selling out, I mean, why did you choose to go industry as opposed to academia, selling out?
So I chose learning analytics because I was a cognitive psychologist who had a bunch of questions she couldn't answer with pre and post test. I haven't chosen to sell out yet because, well, waiting for somebody to pay me enough.
So I think the selling out question is really interesting because I think right now we're finding that companies are the ones who have the data and not institutions. We see more and more moving to the cloud. We see MOOCs. Who has all the MOOC data? Coursera, edX. They're all kind of consortium or companies. And so if you want to do interesting learning analytics, you might have to sell out in order to get to that data.
Okay.
Okay. So why did I choose learning analytics? Well, I think there's a really great opportunity to design better assessments now. As Al said, we have the technology. We just have to do it. Every single year, students are graduating from high school not knowing science, right? We can think about this and talk about this as a learning sciences community for the next 10 or 15 years. My fear is that we will, because, oh, we haven't gotten it just right. No, don't let the perfect interfere with the good. We have the good. We have something very good, right? So that's my answer to the first question. My second question is, with regard to selling out, I'm going to reframe that. I think there's partnerships that are needed, partnerships like yours with researchers like this. This is why I started a company, because I think that many academicians have designed very good products that are not necessarily getting picked up because they're not marketed that way. And so a publisher needs to understand sort of the richness of those products and implement them the way they were designed, right? But there's sort of a lack of infrastructure and a lack of community, and there's a level missing there that I think funders are starting to realize, like the National Science Foundation is starting to realize, in order for really good products to be picked up and marketed and distributed widely by companies like yours, there's a level of partnership that we need to kind of support.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so now I'm going to ask you, like, the ones who represent research and academia, just raise your hand so I can know. Okay, outstanding. So, a question to you. What is that you would want your grad student to know in regards to LA or EDM methods? So you mentioned that it's important there are like graduate students graduating. Each of you have, I'm pretty sure, graduate students. Not necessarily in that position, but still. Most of you have, and you want them to be contributing to your grants, you want them to be learning, you want them to be successful once they graduate or during their PhD. So what is it that you look in? Like, what is it that you want them to learn, you want them to know? For example, in my case, my professor still wants me to pick up as many computer science classes as I can while I'm still a student. I can learn, I can spend time on it now, because she thinks later on I will be too busy to invest into actually learning more new things. So what is it that you look into?
Since I myself don't know very much about the learning analytics or data mining methods, what I want for me and for my students is the capability to be able to ask questions of experts in learning analytics and in data mining so that they can collaborate in the kind of community that I was talking about.
some skills you want your students to know?
All skills.
I think what's really, really important and what sometimes people shortchange is how to validate their measures and to be very skeptical of the modeling. It's not just about the technology, but it's, you know, using it as a lens. What does it tell you? What can't it tell you? Don't take it for granted.
So I'd like to add a little to that. I think when you address a research problem, and this is something that Taylor started talking a little bit about in response to this question, when you address a deep research question about how people learn, this is not a trivial thing. And people don't learn French like they learn science, and they don't learn science like they learn geography. So when you get involved in these really deep projects on learning, there's a lot of theoretical knowledge that needs to be taken into account to design the best kinds of metrics and the best lenses for looking at that data, right? And it's at that rich intersection. And it's very deep. It's exceptionally deep, right? That's why some are skeptical, not high, but some are skeptical that you could have a field called data science. Because could you be a domain general data scientist? Could you be a domain general statistician? Well, I think that you acquire these skills through deep pockets of collaboration, and then you become specialized in medical data analytics or social data analytics or educational data analytics, right? And then those fields will grow as subdisciplines.
I don't have grad students, but as a former grad student, one of the things that I really like about the learning analytics environment is curiosity and learning from really a very, very diverse background from everybody. So, I mean, just going through the different presentations, the problems, ideas, methods, and so on, or even the environments where learning takes place. Like, it could be in K-12, could be in higher education, could be MOOCs, informal, and so on. So, really curiosity, to be curious about the different methods and how can I learn from the other participants or the other expertise.
So the next question, I'm just going to move on to the next one, is the one directed to industry corporations. It's pretty much the same question, except instead of like your graduate students, what is it that you're looking into, like seeing in a CV of a person who's applying for a data scientist or a learning analytics related like positions? Al, you want to help me a little bit?
Yeah, I think one of the skills that it's kind of bedrock is if you're going to be a data scientist, know Python and R. Right? Let's just start with that. And but I want to come back to a point that Carolyn Rosé mentioned. And this goes back to the football analogy. Learning analytics is inherently interdisciplinary. So having the ability to cross boundaries, think from a computational perspective, and then switch to statistical thinking, visualizations, cognitive science. So it's that curiosity and blend, and it's hard. It's very, very hard, but it also makes it fun.
Okay. Anyone else?
My name is Shadi Janjihata from Desire to Learn D2L. So when I'm looking at the resumes for the candidates to join the company, I would like to see, in addition to the skills like Python and R, I'd like to see the problems that they are working on. And I'd like to see the level of deep analysis that they work on the problem. It is not about specific technologies, but it's about how deep they reach to the level of the analysis. And this will show me the way that they are thinking about the problem, and if they face another problem with a different level of analysis, they can still work on it and provide a good positive feedback.
Great, thank you.
Hi, I'm Mike Suppi. I work at Scholastic Education, and definitely I want to say communication skills, super important because we have to communicate the data to a lot of stakeholders, other, our clients, students, teachers, that kind of thing. So just being able to really talk to people is really important.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so kind of summing this up, bringing it back to me, Charles, like graduate students. We're working, we have a current boss that asks us to learn all these things, but then our work actually requires us to get outside of that box, outside of learning. My department is instructional technologies and learning sciences, and the only technical thing that we learn is advanced graphics, which is pretty much just Photoshop. So you can't really do much with Photoshop, but it's not enough. Well, the program doesn't design it for us to be ready for what Al or companies or postdocs or just further jobs besides the graduate student position requires. What is it? Do you guys see any discrepancy between what the programs you're in is offering to what the job in the future is requiring, or the job that you're actually doing right now is requiring? Don't be hiding. I saw there are a lot of grad students.
I'm sure there definitely is, but I'll just say, what did I tell you from the beginning? Exactly what your new boss just said. Learn Python and R.
And I did, but the program is not offering. So that's something that I, as a student, I had to be thinking from the beginning, because you have only a limited number of elective classes. You can't be wasting that. But initially, when you enter the program, you don't know that. So you don't know that there are requirements for other, for example, I had to take statistics, but outside of the simple statistics that education is teaching, and I'm not calling I don't want to degrade it too simple, but it's much simpler than the statistics departments would offer. And those things you don't know the prerequisites you need to. You don't know that those are the things that you actually require to know for doing learning analytics type of work. And so just throwing it out there as you are in academia, just suggestion would be wonderful if you contributed to the departments, created some sort of infrastructure. I'm not necessarily suggesting to have computer science classes, but some sort of guideline to new graduate students that if you're planning to work in this field, if you're planning to be joining and doing work like EM or learning analytics, then these are some of the things that you should be looking into, at least on your own. There are MOOCs that can be listening, so it's not necessarily actual credits to receive, but it's something, some kind of guideline. And I'm not sure if all the programs are like that, but my program is just barely starting on this.
Yeah, I was going to say we live in a MOOC world actually, and so and we're seeing more and more students applying into master's and PhD programs and saying, hey, I don't have a computer science background, I come from this other one, but I took this Python class, this R class, or the educational data mining class. I think Ryan had to leave.
Yes.
Excellent, and so these are really amazing resources, and so it not only shows the students are gaining some knowledge in it. The certificate isn't important; it's that they're driven and they're individuals who want to go consume that, even though they come from a different conceptual or epistemological background.
That's a great point, and just just to add real quick to that, sorry, I completely agree with that, and I have been doing that. I've taken Ryan's course as well, and not only that, but as a grad student, there are a certain number of credits. This is bureaucracy and everything, but you have to get those credits. MOOCs don't really provide you that, and so how I have gone through it is signing up as independent study, but there's not enough of those. You have only 2 or 3 of those throughout the whole PhD. I don't know how many credits you have to do. So these are some of the suggestions that I would include in the departments.
I'd just like to say, I think it's a mistake to believe that you're going to learn everything you need to learn in a classroom. What your graduate education should prepare you for is to teach yourself some things. When I need to analyze data, I've got text data that's part of this, and I've never done text data before. I need to be able to go read what Carolyn's done and figure it out. That's what graduate education's for.
Great point.
Yeah, if I could just add to that, that's almost exactly what I was going to say, but I want to point out, so I finished my PhD 16 years ago, but I still am trying to teach myself new stuff in every opportunity. I love my iPad because I can carry my library with me everywhere I go. I'm always reading new stuff and trying to educate myself more, and I think as academics and even in industry, we just have to keep our eyes on the horizon because the world is changing and we can't depend on somebody else to carve the way for us. And if our programs were designed with exactly the set of courses that we all had to take, we'd all be like a cookie cutter image of one another. But what will make us cutting edge and successful is if we can carve our own space.
That's a great point, wonderful point. And that's why I'm suggesting a sort of guideline, something that's not written in stone. And I have been doing that, and I don't think PhD is like the end of education. Once I'm done learning. Of course not. But definitely like using it in a beneficial way, like using those, I don't know how many years you guys spent, in a more beneficial, efficient way would be wonderful.
I totally agree with these things, but we also know that a lot of us came from fairly established fields. Yes, we keep doing all kinds of things when we're done. This isn't an established field yet. So, as professors in it, a lot of us in here, who I know, are working together to try to come up with what would be the right curriculum for such a data science or learning analytics, whatever we're going to call it today, program. That's a different step than saying what we all keep doing. Your PhD, of course you want to go learn this stuff, right?
Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. I went over my time.
I'm going to take it away a little bit from industry and move it a little bit back into academia, but still in the LA professional world. So past couple days we've been speaking a lot about research that's happening in LA, which is really important and it needs to inform what we do, but then we need to action it. And how are we going to action it is the main thing. How are we actually going to put LA tools in the hands of our academics, our instructors, our tutors, our students, so that actual change can start happening, learning can be improved, pedagogical design can be improved, teaching can be improved. And as much as we can hire academics to do the research, we can't necessarily put it into action without LA professionals to help us do that, which is what I'm here to talk about. So, we're taking on what the title of this session was supposed to be on. So what should our LA professionals look like? They're called all sorts of different things. There's different titles. There's data analysts, data scientists, LA specialists, LA officers. It doesn't really matter what. I've seen lots of different job descriptions come around. Basically, the position descriptions are the same, just different titles. So we won't worry about the titles. So what should they offer? So at UNSW in Australia and Sydney, we've recently been going on a bit of a hiring blitz, trying to find LA professionals to help us actually apply the research that we're doing and the research that everyone else is doing into actual practice. So we've been working on position descriptions and how we might actually find the right skills, the right people to make an impact. So these were in just very high-level form, the type of things we were looking for from the candidates applying for various levels and types of LA professional positions. So take a look at that. And I'm going to shoot past that to the bigger picture. So what I have seen, not at UNSW yet, but at other institutions where LA officers, LA specialists, and whatnot are being hired, very often they're coming from industry. Very often they might be BI specialists, marketing analysts. They have the skills, they have the data visualization skills, the dashboard skills, the data mart skills, but the main thing that's missing is that bigger picture, that bigger educational, higher education picture of what does learning and teaching really mean? What are the problems in learning and teaching in higher ed? I'm meeting these people and their major question is, I have the skills, I've been hired as an LA specialist, an LA officer, I've been told I need to come up with a strategy of learning analytics for my institution. And I have no idea where to start. And I'm here to learn from other people because they're lost. And it's a bit of a learning curve. So to try to minimize that learning curve as much as possible, we're looking for people who actually have that bigger picture around what learning analytics is, not just analytics in general, and what it actually means for teaching and learning in higher ed. So we recently put a couple job descriptions up, and one was specifically around looking for an educational data analyst. And so we asked, this is one of the questions for you to think think about. If you are hiring a LA professional, what sort of skills you're going to look for comes across in their CVs and their resumes, and that's great, but how do you actually know that they can apply the skills in practice? How do you ensure yourself that you're hiring someone as best as you can who is actually going to be able to deliver on what you want? So we asked our candidates, our shortlisted candidates, to do a couple exercises for us before coming in for their interviews. And this is one of the ones we asked the particular position to do for us prior to coming in for the interview. It's an educational data analyst for MOOCs, so we kind of focused that a little bit. And because there's great data available from MIT and Harvard X, we asked them, basically their instruction was, visualize the key elements in the data set. That was it, there was no other instruction. It was up to them to figure out what these key elements actually are, what is actually going to be important to visualize, and how they're going to visualize it. And so this is one example of what came out, which I have permission to show today. And then we asked them to do a bit of a data analysis task for us, to extract, prepare, and analyze some raw log data, and to develop some sort of data visualization report that will be useful for your average academic. So again, a little bit of knowledge around that bigger picture. And a question for you to think about as you look at this as well is, are these particular skills that we ask, and we might not have been correct about it, are they the ones that we actually need to be looking for? Are these type of tasks the type of tasks that would actually give us the information that we need in order to make the right decision when we're hiring? So this was one of the examples that came through from that task. Again, a bunch of log data was given to them. They could use whatever tools they wanted, and they basically had to come up with some sort of dashboard, visualization, report, something that would be useful and interpretable by an average academic. And this is one example that was given to us prior to coming in for the interview. So moving on to what can they get. So those are the skills that we're looking for. That is the type of product we're hoping they'd be able to deliver on, at least even before they actually start the position. And they can get jobs, because there are jobs in that area. Where are the jobs? They're definitely here.
But that's not the only thing.
No. Certainly not. It's everywhere, essentially. So there's definitely jobs if you have those kind of skills, if you have that interest. And I'm going to leave in a couple of questions for you to think about, and to also think about in terms of what the real role of an LA professional would be in higher ed. How you can actually take the research that you've done or you're doing and actually action it. So how can we start actually making change in our institutions? How can we actually have our academics start to get past the cultural shift around learning analytics? How can we put the data in their hands in a way that they can actually use it, that your average academic can use? What do we have to do? How do we communicate with them? And how do we actually make this relatively easy to do for them in terms of, because they're time poor, just like we're all time poor. So how can we do this? How can we actually help research become applied in practice? And we have a job posting out until the 6th of July, Australia time, since we're the 5th here. If you're interested, take a look, come talk to me. But more than that, if you're interested in hiring your own LA professionals, take a look at the job description. We looked at some job descriptions before we came up with ours. And if you have suggestions on how to be improved, it's great that we can maybe start having that kind of conversation. And that's it.
Great, thanks. And that was actually a spectacular catch, but you guys missed it because it was behind the lectern. But that was actually probably the most coordinated thing I've ever done in my life. But it's on the live stream, or at least this much of it is. Useful, thanks. So now we're going to go over to the web, and we've got Jared Stein, who's going to talk about some more industry stuff, I believe.
Hey guys, how are you? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, great.
Okay, and I'm going to share some PowerPoints with you, so let me know if you can see my title screen. Great, great. So I'm Jared Stein. I'm the Vice President of Research and Education here at Instructure. And I guess there's some echo there.
Go ahead.
I'll keep talking, and if we need to pause to stop that echo, let me know. So there in the room with you is Aaron Johnson. Aaron, will you raise your hand so people can see you? Aaron's a data analyst on my team, and I think it's important for you guys to know that I'm an educator, I'm an instructional designer, I'm a technologist, I'm a manager, but I'm not a data scientist. But Aaron is, and so if you want a first-hand account of what it's like to work for a medium-sized company in the field of learning analytics, ask Aaron. He'll tell you about the joys and the frustrations, and he'll give it to you straight. So let me set the context by telling you just a bit about our company and what we do. Instructure creates the learning platform called Canvas. You may be familiar with Canvas, learning management system used in higher ed and K-12. It's been growing really, really fast. And to kind of give you just a little bit of sense of how we're different and how that might relate to the field of learning analytics, we're a true multi-tenant cloud application, and we run on Amazon Web Services. So just like with Google or Gmail, everybody's on the latest version. Same thing with Canvas. Everybody's on the latest version. All of the data is consistent and uniform from account to account, and it's hosted around the world in a pretty sophisticated data management system. So that's an important thing to know because that gives us the ability from a learning analytics point of view to look not just at the micro level, but also at the macro level, looking at the use of the platform across institutions, whether we want to slice that by the Carnegie classifications or by all Canvas accounts. So let me talk a little bit here about how we are using educational data. Now we do use data throughout the company, but specifically educational data, I kind of classify that into three particular uses. Number one is to inform our community. For example, we ask questions like, how does course design correlate with student participation? And so what? Like that question, so what, is really, really important to us because everybody wants to change the world. We certainly do. And for us, we've always been concerned with creating the broadest impact for the most for the largest amount of users. That is to say, we don't want to just empower those innovators and early adopters. We want to empower everybody, even those teachers and those students who have not traditionally adopted technology. So for the purpose of informing our community, a learning analytics professional would lean toward education technology, right? So there would be a person who has had a lot of background experience in the field of education, instructional technology, whatever, and those people might live in a company like ours in the marketing department, in the ed research department like I run, or other departments. The second purpose is to inform product, and by product I mean Canvas. So what can we learn from how the learning platform is being used that will tell the product team what to do next? For example, are users benefiting from a certain feature, from feature X? If they're not, why might that be? And so we can dig into historical data from Canvas usage and identify trends over time and try to identify obstacles that may prevent the largest possible audience from benefiting from a feature we might develop. It might also tell us that the feature that we spent so much time on is not particularly effective, and for perhaps usability, perhaps a feature function, we need to redesign it. And so that person would lean toward a more traditional data science role, and they would probably live in the product team on the research and development side. Now, the third way that we use educational data is actually in the product itself. So this is to answer questions like, can we build a tool that does something? Can we build a tool that helps our users understand how online behavior predicts learning outcomes? And so this would definitely be a programmer, a developer, and they would live on the product and engineering team. So for us, that person would also need to be able to very clearly communicate the complex data to very, I want to say normal people, but people like me who understand how education works, who understand how teaching works, but maybe aren't statisticians. And so that gets me to my list of 10 educational data analyst skills. And so from a very practical perspective, if I were to hire a new team member today, I would be looking for some of these skills. Now I say that this is in essence the new webmaster, because if any of you guys were involved in the field of web development in the late 90s, you know that that title webmaster was pretty much a catch-all for people who were doing web design and development. But as the web developed and progressed, and as it was more broadly adopted, and as individual companies and organizations' needs of the web changed, the role of webmaster dissolved and was replaced by teams with very specialized skill. So I think if we look at learning analytics professionals today, it's going to be very much like the webmaster, where you're expected to have a broad range of skills. But that I expect that will change in the future as learning analytics becomes both more popular and more effective. So with that in mind, here are my 10 skills. Number one is just simple project management. And this goes beyond learning analytics. It's so that you can answer the question for a manager, can you get this done in a certain sprint or in a certain period of time? For us, we always adapt an agile development philosophy, which means that we release early and we release often. And oftentimes that requires a little bit of mental adjustment to get into the mode of rapid prototyping, which is to say, we're going to try something and see what happens, but we're not going to spend a lot of time on it because we want to see the impact, and we may have to iterate. We may have to go back and start over. And I think for folks like Aaron, who work with me, he's always having to listen to me ask the question, oh, that's cool, but what about X, right? And then we go back to the drawing board, or we go back into the data. Communication, again, a skill that's important for pretty much any job, but I think especially for an educational data analyst, you have to be able to communicate information clearly to a lot of different kinds of stakeholders, not just to your peers. And to quote Steve Krug, don't make me think, just make it really obvious. Some background in education theory is important. I think the depth of that background is going to depend on the kind of role you're seeking. But theory of learning and instruction, theory of online and blended, as well as face-to-face instruction, I think is super important. Statistics, enough said, right? The ability to retrieve data and to understand data representation standards, obviously SQL queries, but also being able to work with, that should be CSV, comma separated value, and JSON format. That's a very common representation standard, and we use those extensively here. Some rudimentary or functional scripting and programming ability, going toward the deep end when you're talking about the ability for machine learning. I find that we can only go so far with basic queries and basic scripting, that there's a point at which machine learning will help us be more efficient, especially as we're dealing with really large data sets. Visualization, surprise. So not only do you have to be a nerd with data, you have to make stuff pretty too. And I know one of the other panelists mentioned, the ability to work with Photoshop, for instance. So that's one of the skill sets that we like to have, but for us, as our team kind of grows, that's becoming less important because we do have access to graphic designers too. Data storage and management, so that we don't have to do things again that we've done in the past. And I know folks there at the conference are talking about different data management tools and different approaches. So that's something that I think is going to become increasingly important. And finally, knowledge management, being able to track your practices and store the information that you do discover so that there's some institutional memory within the company or the organization you're working for. So that's my list of 10 data analyst skills. I'll just open up for any questions for me, and I'm happy to talk more specifically about some of the things we've been working on.
Okay, we might take questions for anyone on the panel. at this point, so I'll hand it over to you guys. Do I need to put on a teacher face? Correct.
I don't really know your approach to learning analytics. So just a quick question, how customizable is it for a school or a teacher, and how does it compare to open source approaches?
Sorry, who was that to? Who was that directed at? Oh, sorry. So, Jared, did you hear that question?
I'm afraid I did. You'll probably have to repeat the questions. The audio is a little rough.
Hi, I'm Andy from King's College. I'm not really clear on your approach on learning analytics. I just want to ask you, how customizable is it for a school or a tutor to change your approach? And how does it compare to open source approaches?
Yeah, I still only caught part of it.
I think we're looking for a comparison between the approach at Canvas and an open source approach. Or in terms of customizability.
In terms of what?
Customizability.
Okay, for the platform in general. So Canvas is actually commercial open source. All of the code is open source. We take an approach to customization that doesn't require the code, the core code itself, but instead encourage customization through the use of our open APIs, as well as through plugging out to new tools through the LTI stack. Is that what you guys were asking? So as it relates to learning analytics, we have a lot of to do more or different things with the Canvas data and then what we provide through our analytics dashboards or our data reports. And so they'll actually create new interfaces and new tools within Canvas that access the Canvas API for the data and then make that part of the interface using the LTI spec.
Hi, Chris Brooks from the University of Michigan, and this is for kind of all the panelists. And one of the tensions that comes up is, as academics, we're not just training the kind of potential employees, but we're also training researchers, and we're actively doing research. And I'm curious what you see the interaction. So at an event like this, it's great to see interaction between kind of companies and corporate partners who are building the technologies our universities are buying. What do you see the opportunity for interaction between academics and commercial entities around, specifically with the thoughts around PhD students? So students who maybe, it's many years, maybe 5-6 years before they're going to get their degree. There's kind of longer term relationships. And it's not just a skills training, but they're actually coming to an academic research of their own.
I can take I just first really looking for two primary areas of collaboration. One is our interest on the industry side is which areas of research have the greatest potential to lead to product development. So just help identify that, and then collaborate with researchers with kind of moving to the next stage of the areas of research that are underway. A subset of that research has the potential to lead to product development. And I think it's actually a good thing for graduate students, PhD students, to begin to think in that mode. Not necessarily all of them, but how do I think about an area of research that I'm working on or could be working on? What's the next step? What is the next step to turning it into a product. Whether that product is used commercially or sold commercially, or it ends up being something that's used by the institution. I think that, there isn't a lot of training that I've seen that PhD students, graduate students have.
It's like the entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah. So yeah, thinking, I think that's a good word, a good way of characterizing. How can I think as a PhD student, as an entrepreneur? Are there research ideas that I'm working on or could be working on? And if I were to start my own company or others, what's involved in that? Yeah, so I'll stop it.
Time for one more.
Well, I'm L1 from Columbia Teachers College. I want to go back to the discrepancy question we raised before. I think my comment is going to apply, I think, both to academia and industry. I think that's a really great question, not just applying to PhD students. I'm a student also, and also worked in the industry before. I think discrepancy could be the best opportunity for us, because whenever there's discrepancy, the gap, there's ought to be some innovation. And then because we never had LAC, we never had EBM before, and then because we had discrepancy, we will have the driving force to create something new. For myself, that just within the MOOC research community, if not for the creation of MOOC, I would not have the opportunity to work with a professor teaching British literature together, because we all both offering MOOCs together, so we can look at data. So a professor in British literature can also offer insights into learning analytics. I think that's pretty amazing. And in terms of like industry, I wanted to ask some questions to Canvas. When you guys are looking at candidates, you just listed the 10 skill sets on your last PowerPoint, and you mentioned the knowledge management. Would you be able to elaborate a bit more on that? Because for my own understanding, from what you just said, knowledge management referred to how you can like personally transfer from what you did before to what you can get to apply in your future work. Does that sound big?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think knowledge management is a challenge for all companies. It's simply the idea that the knowledge that our teams have and generate should be captured in some way and referenceable, not just by the future, but by the rest of the company. And so I think our data analysts on my team anyway have been using, for example, IPython Notebook as a tool to document the work that they've done, both the results and the process that got them there, so that at some point in the future when I say, oh, remember when we looked at the use of item analysis in Canvas, they'll be able to say, no, I don't, but I do remember making a log about that in the IPython Notebook, and so let's go back and see what we actually did. So it's one of those tools that adds a little bit of work on the front end, but saves you a tremendous amount of time and energy on the back end.
There's an added comment. I think knowledge management
I think we might wrap it up there, and lunch will be served upstairs again, and there's a couple of logistical announcements. The first is that the workshops today will be held in the upper floors of this building, so on the 3rd and 4th